Sing soft or?
No, as long as everyone can hear, I'm good here. So my name is Nancy Flanagan. As Steve said, I'm from Michigan. And I love to come to New York. I've done lots of work here. I kind of relate to New York because for many, many years we were very much like you. You know, a strong union state, a large state, a state with many districts. You have 700, we only have 550, but I get many, many small districts, you know, with some large urban districts. We are now different from you because within the last year we became a right-to-work state. And if you had ever asked me, even like the day before that happened, if Michigan would ever be Michigan, the flagship state of the United Auto Workers, would ever be a right-to-work state. So my advice to you here today is watch out, because stuff happens, as the bumper sticker says. So I'm here to talk about teacher leadership today, and when I first talked to Steve about this, it was back in January. He called and he said, your name was given to us to talk about leadership. You think you could give us sort of the big picture of teacher leadership? And I'm not sure if he actually used the word inspired, but you know, get people fired up about teacher leadership. And I said, yes, I can do that. I want to come to New York and make this speech. And so I have been writing, I have a column in Education Week, and I've been writing about teacher leadership all along, and I noticed that in your folders there's one of my pieces is in there, and it's called Shutting Teachers Up. And I've been writing not so wonderful stuff about teacher leadership. I wrote a column called Teacher Leadership, Dead in the Water. And as it was printed, I thought, I wonder if Steve Dana is, you know, reading these and rethinking his decision to let me come and talk to you today. But the deal is, I've been waiting around in teacher leadership for about 20 years, beginning with my tenure as the Michigan Teacher of the Year, when I attended the first ever National Teacher Forum hosted by the United States Department of Education, and Richard Riley was the secretary at the time, and in my personal opinion, best secretary ever, you know. And he gave a speech and he said this: teachers want to be partners in, not objects of reform. And this was the first time I ever started thinking about, oh yeah, I might have a voice. I should be at the table. I'm an expert. And I was in a room full of people who were kind of knocked out by this idea. Yes, this is a change in thinking. You know, we don't have to just take what rolls downhill. We should be controlling our own work, or influencing our own work, if not controlling it. It was a very major idea for me. And in the subsequent 20 years or so, I've been doing lots of work in teacher leadership. For some reason that I really can't fathom right now, I started being sent books by publishers. Would you read this book on teacher leadership? This is my little shelf of books that I have read and reviewed for publishers. And the books lately, especially lately, and there have been a lot of books, a lot of reading and a lot of thinking about teacher leadership. Some of the very best of it you're going to get to see later when Jill gets to talk, because she's got lots of tools and lots of data. But the books tend to take on this tone of select teacher leaders, decide what work you want to have them do, give them the training they will need, and then teacher leaders will change things. And this bothers me, and there's something not quite right about it, but it seems to be the way that this idea of teacher leadership is shaping up in education policy world. So I wish I had really great news for you, and there's great news on the small potatoes front. There's great news about programs in teacher leadership and small things that are starting, and again, those tools and templates. But the most important thing, I think, to know about teacher leadership and policy right now is that it's flowing further downhill. It used to be your building administrator, and then it was the state and their policies and regulations and goals and standards. Now it's federal, and that's been a massive change in the last 10 years. The big picture, the intersection of national policy and teacher leadership, I think is probably not very promising at the moment. So I thought the fact that there was more than 20 years between these two quotes, we thought the moment for teacher leadership was 20 years ago. But now we've got the Secretary of Education saying, now is the time for teacher leadership. So what's happened in the last 20 years? What does that look like? My theory is that we have been gathering timber and cutting planks and not thinking enough about how passionately we want to lead. We have been developing programs, we have been following policies or pushing back against policies, but we haven't been feeling the internal passion. So what I want to talk today about is a kind of an organic leadership, something that springs up inside of you and tells you, this is where I want to go. I don't even use the term teacher leader anymore. By the way, if you want to clear the room of superintendents, give them chart paper, magic markers, glue sticks, feathers, glitter, and say, draw a picture of teacher leadership. It will be amazing how many of them are stepping out into the hallway with an urgent call. I've used that exercise many times. What does teacher leadership look like? And I'd like you to take just a minute or 90 seconds here and turn to the person next to you and generate a couple of words about what teacher leadership looks like to you. Collaboration.
Positive.
Support.
Expertise.
I like that word.
Proactive.
Proactive.
Bravery.
Advocate. Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah.
Change agent.
If I had given you chart paper and magic markers, you could have drawn something. Teachers, by the way, love this exercise. You know, they draw the teacher, then the children, then the mountains in the background, and the tote bags, you know, and the books. And it's interesting to see how this looks. I have lately stopped using the word teacher leader because I don't think we have a definition of what teacher leadership is, or even a common generalized conception. There may be one here in this room, maybe one between you and the person next to you. But two incidents persuaded me that we really don't know what teacher leadership is. And the first one is this. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was at the AACTE, the Colleges of Teacher Education, that association filled with college professors who are teacher educators. And I was working a booth for a nonprofit, and we were, handing out materials and having these great conversations with people. And a woman came up and she said, We were one of the first universities in the country, and this was out in California, the place where she worked, to develop a full-blown master's degree in teacher leadership. And I just heard Steve Dana say that that's something that SUNY Plattsburgh has done, and that they're popping up everywhere now. They're common, but it was relatively new at the time. And she said, we've now put, I think it was 5 cohorts through. We were, pioneers in this effort, and they have people who have gone through, and she talked a little bit about the coursework, which sounded absolutely amazing. The things that they were talking about, change theory, and I said, well, what are you hearing back from your graduates? And she said, the most common thing we hear from our graduates is they go back to their buildings and their principals won't let them leave. And I thought, oh, there's a disconnect here between what a teacher leader is, what training they need, and then how that plays out in real life. And the second story, the second incident came from my own state. We have just developed a 3rd tier of licensure. There's probationary, there's teacher for life, I can't remember what it's called, the professional certificate, and now we have an advanced professional certificate, and you can get that by being National Board certified or having a master's in teacher leadership, not just a generic education master's, or and various other ways to do it. But the cheapest and probably best way to do it is to become National Board certified. And I was one of 2 teachers on the statewide Blue Ribbon Commission that developed the protocols to get this 3rd teacher licensure. And so we're sitting around the table, and there are college deans and superintendents and union leaders and some folks from nonprofits, people from the Department of Education, and again, 2 teachers. The question arose on the very first day, well, what purpose would a 3rd tier of licensure serve? Well, that was very obvious to me, that these identified teacher leaders could become mentors, curriculum developers, instructional coaches, grant readers. And you have to talk about the work that the department needs done too. They don't care about instructional coaches, but they do care about who's going to read grants. And there would be just lots and lots of work for these folks to do. And it just seemed so clear to me that this was one of the purposes of identifying teacher leaders. And then the questions started to emerge, and people said, well, who gets to decide? Will these people make more money? Will they have different titles? Why don't they just become administrators if they want to lead? That's a biggie. And then finally, from the union representative, she said, I don't think we can afford teacher leaders right now. Think about that. The point here is there is always teacher leadership. There's never a teacher leadership vacuum. I'll bet if you are a classroom teacher or working in a school building, K-12 building right now, you can identify who the leading voices are on your staff, who has influence, who speaks up at staff meetings, who gets asked to do things. There's always teacher leadership. The question is, where are those teacher leaders taking us? Just something to think about. So if we're going to redefine or think about it, here's just a list. This is just what I could think of in 5 minutes. Things that teacher leaders could do. The kinds of work that are involved in teacher leadership, and all of these involve policy. By the way, you can have my slides. I see some of you taking pictures of these slides. You can have my slides. Just my email isn't here. Just contact me. You can have them. You can use them. My name's not even on it. And by the way, it's spelled wrong in the packet. The email is right. So when you say policy, teachers' eyes tend to glaze over. They're like, I don't really want to get involved in that because my passion, my love is what I do every day in the classroom. But I'm here to tell you, unless you are willing to get involved in policy, and policy is often, we assume policy is what's happening in Albany, and there's that, and what's happening in DC, but it's also what's happening at the school board level. And Richard Ingersoll did some wonderful work, wrote a book called Who Controls Teachers' Work? And he did a lot of surveying of teachers and asked them what they wish they had more control over. And they said things like, I wish I had control over whether students could wear hats to class. Or I wish I had control over whether I could let students miss a certain number of assignments at my discretion, that we didn't have a building-wide grading policy. I really think that should be my work. Or, they were mostly small potatoes things. And then when he asked the teachers, what about curriculum? What about selection materials? What about instructional techniques and strategies? They were more willing to let that policy flow down. But Richard Ingersoll did his work in the 1990s. I think if he did it today, there might be a different perspective. But the teachers were very clear about what they wanted to know or what they wanted to control in their work. So here are some leadership models that we see today. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but there are role-based models selected by somebody else. These are people who apply for a leadership role or are selected by the principal or run for a position, in the union. I think when we think of teacher leaders, this is what the people around that table in the three-tier leadership committee were thinking when they said we can't afford teacher leaders. They were thinking about these formal leadership roles, and the vast majority of books and research done on this is around formal leadership roles. You are identified with this. And then there are teachers who decide, I'm just going to lead. I'm the senior teacher in the 3rd grade, and I'm going to help these novice teachers in my, adapt to the math series, or I would like to have, design the common assessments for the history department, and they just step up and say, I've got some knowledge and some skills and I'd like to share it. Lately, we have seen what I'm calling here, and this might be a pejorative label, trained spokespersons. There's a lot of money out there now going into nonprofits that are designed around teacher leadership. A lot of that money comes from the Gates Foundation. The National Network of State Teachers of the Year, for example, people who have been State Teachers of the Year now have a formal organization with a formal leader, and they're funded by Gates, and they are sending State Teachers of the Year out to endorse things. Right now the work is mostly around the Common Core, of course, but they're taking these people who have a title, who have some award-winning, and they're also working with the National Board about sending folks out to advocate, and they train them. These are people who have been given some really good skill development, and but they're following somebody else's agenda. And very lately, we've been hearing about teacherpreneurs, entrepreneurial teachers. Yeah, anybody heard that term in here? Teacherpreneur, yes, that where you're taking your skills and you're marketing your skills. And sometimes it's as simple as the site, and I can't think of the name of it right now, where people sell their lesson plans. Yeah, teachers pay teachers, right? Yeah, and you gotta love the title. It's like, because is there anybody in this room who makes enough money? Exactly. But that teacherpreneur thing, if you're working in public education and you're taking public money and your mission is to make education better, more relevant, more meaningful, more useful, to change lives, there's something a little questionable about, it's not about selling your lesson plans, you know, that's fine, or your ideas, but I'm not sure how I feel about that. And just throwing that out there. These aren't the only leadership models, but there's some that you see fairly frequently. All right, so here's a case. I'll kind of give you the details on the case, and then we're going to have a conversation with your same folks here, because this is a person I actually know. And I met him when I mentored him through his National Board certification. This was his first leadership quest, where he decided he wanted to be the best possible teacher he could be. And he's a very good guy. And he's a career technical education teacher. So as soon as he certified, he was, you know, the old National Board thing, all dressed up and no place to go. You know, now I'm an NBCT, and now what? And so I told him, and as I would tell any other National Board certified teacher, don't expect someone to come to you now and wave a magic wand over you and say, oh, you're a leader, ta-da. So you gotta make your own leadership work. So he said, what I really want to do is show some people the wonderful things that I've been doing in my class. You know, talk about Sal Khan. He was Sal Khan before Sal Khan was Sal Khan. You know, he had wonderful videos that he crafted that, you know, he was all about flipped instruction before anybody was calling it flipped instruction. He was just doing this. This was stuff he made up for his classroom. And so he did a few conferences, and what people kept telling him is, you know, my principal would never let me do that, or I don't have the technology to do that. And he kept running against all these roadblocks. And so finally, he said, really where I can be the most effective is in my own building, in my high school. So he went to his principal and told her, if I combined my 3rd and 4th hour classes with my lunch and my, you know, I can, in my conference time, I can do nearly a half a day as a help desk. I'm already helping people with their technology needs in the building, but I'd like to turn this into a formal role. And it won't impact my class sizes or, you know, anything. I'm willing to teach a double class as long as it can be back to back with my free time, and then I can have 2 hours a day plus lunch to go out and work one-on-one with teachers and make this a more tech-friendly building. And she hesitated and said, well, I'm going to have to talk to somebody about this. And she talked to the technology coordinator, and he didn't think it was a really good idea because he, you know, Dale's job was not being the help desk. He was kind of creating his own job here, and so that never came to pass, although he's still, you know, helping people. Then he decided, I want to be in a policy leadership role, and so he started taking his professional days and going up to Lansing and sitting in the state board meetings and teaching himself about funding, which was all screwed up in Michigan, like, you know, the other 49 states. And so he kind of became this expert, took a class in school funding, introduced himself to funding leaders, you know, introduced himself to the state board where that is all controlled, and then, using that knowledge, he ran for the state legislature. And he ran 2 years ago against a popular incumbent, knowing he would lose. He ran as a Republican in a Republican district, and where the primary is essentially the election. But it got him out into public forums, and He was able to meet a lot of people. He thought, I'm going to build myself a 2-year runway into this political, into the state house. Well, the primary was last week, and he ran again, 2 years later, and he put up $800 of his own money, and then he contacted the Michigan Education Association, where he's a member, of course, and asked for their endorsement and for some funding. And they endorsed somebody else. They endorsed the editor of the local newspaper, who writes editorials all the time about how terrible the schools are and how we should get rid of bad teachers and how tenure is, evil incarnate. And so he was stunned that his own union wouldn't even endorse him. And he's a good guy. There's no baggage attached to this guy. So the winner of the election was a Tea Party candidate who put $50,000 of her own money up and had candidacy stuff, signs and stickers. And so I called him the day after the primary to say, I'm really sorry that this happened to you. And he said, I am done with teacher leadership. I'm done. I'm done with trying to help the other people in my building. I'm not going to sit for renewal as a National Board Certified Teacher. I'm not going to any more State Board of Education meetings. I'm done being a teacher leader. And I didn't really know what to say to him, because I thought, wow, you've tried this through multiple channels. You have given it your own time, your own passion, your own money. So what I would like you to do right now, if you would please, is take about 5 minutes and figure out what I should tell Dale. And as a music teacher, I need to point out that I have 65 8th graders and they all have noisemakers. So I'm an instrumental music teacher. So anybody have any great advice? Yes.
The first question I would ask him is, why did you want to become a teacher leader to begin with? Number one. And as I listened, it was more about him and the roles he wanted to fulfill than about teacher leadership itself.
Wow. Anybody? Thank you.
I'm thinking that he created a public debate. He brought the issues of education to the public dialogue level, and I think that that's really good. And it goes back to his comment as well. What was his ultimate objective? And if that was his ultimate objective, then he was successful in doing that. And being elected wasn't his goal, but more just to bring the issues of education to a public dialogue. And I think that, as I was saying with my group, is really powerful.
Yeah.
Because we as teachers are in the trenches. And so often policy comes down to us, but we're the ones who see the impact of policy. And I think that his goal, or he needed his clarity and his objective needed to be there to know that he actually probably was very effective in what he did.
I should be writing this down. But yeah, yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
We felt that if he concentrated on his informal leadership, within the classroom, within his school, and just kind of says, I'm going to be the best darn teacher I know how to be, that some of that other buy-in would come along the way, as opposed to kind of going out there and, trying,
Yeah.
whatever.
I think that when I looked at his case study and spoke with my partner, he really is autonomous in typical ways that teachers close the door, we teach in our space. And what we found is that teacher leadership thrives when you really recognize that it's not only the support you give others, but the support that they give you, and you have to develop this web of support for each other. And so he needs to step back and look around his building. There are probably other teachers who are also interested in leadership roles, and he needs to cultivate, whether it's a professional learning community or support for one another, so that they can augment each other rather than just closing the door and trying to do this heavy lift by himself.
Well, there are a lot of smart people in this room, first of all. And I know him well enough to know that his saying to me, I am never going to do anything extra again, I'm the first person in the parking lot, that'll last about 2 days. And I just know him. And actually the only advice I offered him was, want to go out for a beer? Which we will be doing when we get back. But yes, yeah, thank you. You touched on many good aspects of this. So who is the typical teacher leader today? Who is the typical teacher today? Does anybody in this room know what the modal level of teaching experience is right now? Not the average, or the mean, the modal. Where's the biggest lump in the experience spectrum? 10 to 20? Yeah, how much, the modal level of experience for teachers in the United States right now? 1 point something. Yes. The big bulge is in first and second year teachers. And then after that, it tapers down. And yeah, if you add that, put all the 40 years in with them, then the mean is something else. But most teachers right now in the United States are in their first year or two of teaching. So that's worth thinking about as you go out to engender teacher leadership. Things look really different in your first year of teaching. And I've been working with a group around issues around the Common Core. And first and second year teachers really tend to like the Common Core. Because wow, there it is, the structure they need. Because their whole focus right now is practice. They want to build a good practice and an excellent practice. And so they appreciate it. And they say things like, there was never anything like this before. It's like, well, of course, if you've been teaching, for 35 years, yes, there was. And in fact, tick-tock, the pendulum, and there have been many things like this, and some you might have liked lots better than the Common Core. But that's an important factor to keep in mind as you start thinking about how you, and I saw one of the questions out, Pete, and saw one of the questions out in the hall. And it's, how are you going to engender leadership in others? And yes, it's not about your ego. It's about how you share the leadership you've been given or you've carved out for yourself, because that's what good leaders do. They bring more people on board. And so think about that as you are building your own leadership practice and spreading that out. And who is driving the teacher leadership agenda today? Anybody? Government?
People with the money.
People with the money. Yeah. Yes. And where do they get that money? There was an article in Politico yesterday that the Gates Foundation has spent $48 million promoting the Common Core through various nonprofits and various small. Okay, so if working, developing curriculum and working around the Common Core, no matter what you feel about it, and what I feel about it doesn't matter. That's where the money's coming from today. And some of it's federal money, but there is a lot more foundation money. And that's another change. That the reshaping of public education is coming from places where it hasn't come from in a long time, where that money is happening. Matter of fact, I want to share something with you that, and I have to read this. This was from Salon magazine 2 days ago. I wrote his name down here. Rehan Salam, you know who he is? He's a thinker, and he wrote. This is regarding the situation in Ferguson, Missouri right now, and he starts the column by advocating for cops to wear body cameras, making that mandated. And then he says, but why stop at video recording the police? While I will happily concede that video recording is particularly important for police in light of their ability to use deadly force, there are many public servants who have considerable power over others and who are shielded from scrutiny in the absence of video recording. Public school teachers are the most obvious example. Some readers will be offended by the idea of video recording cops and teachers. You might even invoke the specter of mass surveillance or some other outrage, but I see it differently. Privacy is a wonderful thing, but teachers in the classrooms are not private citizens living their lives. They are public servants. Video recording is nothing more and nothing less than a tool for accountability. If you come across an argument against video recording teachers that doesn't sound like an attempt to avoid accountability, let me know. I don't know how you would feel about having to wear a body camera or having everything that happens in your classroom or, you know, your office, if you're an administrator, being taped all the time, automatically. But this is Salon magazine. You know, this is where the public discourse is happening. So the leadership agenda is influenced by a lot more things than what we consider our core work. You know, instruction, curriculum, standards, assessments, the things we do, mentoring new teachers. There are a lot of outside forces out there. Approaches to leadership. There's a wonderful exercise that asks teachers which is their go-to mode of leadership. Are you one of those people who says, just get it done, make a task list, take action? Or are you one of those people who asks, why are we doing this? You know them, they derail staff meetings, you know. They wanting to talk about, you know, why are we grading kids in this way? Are you one of those people who likes to work with others? Or are you someone who really likes structure? Annette Romano and I we spent several delightful hours yesterday driving around, picking people up and going places. And she told me that she went to the national boards, the Washington State's National Board Candidate Support Jumpstart, and they told all of the candidates to bring 3 binders and tabs and sticky notes, and told them what color these all had to be, and highlighters, and so all this material could be color coded. And I thought, oh, somebody really was big on structure out there. And think about it for a second. Are you a person who likes to get things done? Are you a person who likes to think things over, ponder things before you move? Are you somebody who likes best to work with others, or are you a lone ranger? Or are you somebody who has one of those little rolling milk crates with folders, and that's what makes you comfortable because everything is so beautifully organized? How many of you would say you're action-oriented? And yeah, there are always 2 or 3 that bring your attention. How many of you like to search for meaning? People who like to work with others, feel that your best work is done in community. People who rely on structure. Which of those in terms of leadership, which of those is the most important?
All of them.
That's an easy one, softball question. If it feels like your leadership is going nowhere, you might want to ask yourself, what's missing from my leadership practice? What am I focused on and what am I not focused on? Anybody read this book? Drive, yes, by Daniel Pink. Yeah, he wrote another book called Whole New Mind that got a lot more press that I think was not nearly this book, as good as this book. This book has everything in the world to do with education. My copy is full of stickies and highlights and things, but Pink says, and I think this is correct, and it's well documented with research, that 3 factors have to be in place for people to be motivated. They have to have purpose, clear moral purpose. They have to have mastery over the skills that they need. And they have to have autonomy to be able to do this without direction. I have for you 5 quick ideas about leadership, and then we'll knock off. Here, I'm looking at the clock here. 5 ideas to consider. The first one is this one. If you're doing somebody else's leadership work, it's probably not going to be very good work. If you want to lead, you have to be pretty passionate. I'm thinking about my friend Dale here. I'm not sure he was really passionate about finance. It just seemed to be the right thing to him. But what needs changing most right now? It's about leading from your heart. Tell a new story. There's this whole theory about narrative, leading through narrative. Wouldn't you like to teach at this school? Yes. How exciting would that be? We tell a lot of the same old stories, and we fight back against the way things are instead of creating a brand new vision, a brand new idea about what our work could look like. Love the ones you're with, especially administrators. Lately I have been thinking, I've had a lot of empathy for school administrators because school administrators have been popping up as leaders and pushing back against the idea that someone else above them is telling them what to do and how to run their school, and the really courageous administrators who are saying, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but I don't think it's good for kids. If you have an administrator like that, hug them. If you don't have an administrator like them, chat severely with them and see if you can activate their moral core so that they can tell a new story about leadership. When school leaders and teachers are working together, and we haven't traditionally been working together for decades, once we start working together, I really think the sky is the limit. So consider your administrator, your friend, and your colleague, and your ally. Play on a bigger stage. How many of you read blogs? Good, they're out there. They're out there. You have to be part of the discourse. You have to read, you have to comment, and you have to be part of this public conversation that's emerging. I think that's the place where teacher leadership is emerging in the most exciting way possible, is on the internet. That's where the conversations are happening. And more people who have felt they are controlling teacher leadership are paying attention to what teachers who are free agents are saying. So play on a bigger stage. It's not just about your building. Maybe that's where your heart is and your passion is, and that's where you're going to lead. But inform yourself. Read things that really tick you off. You know, like the guy who says, let's just put a video camera in every classroom, and then they'll be accountable. Yes, play on a bigger stage, and finally, study role models. I've got several role models in education. One is Terry Dozier, who was the South Carolina Teacher of the Year, who was tapped by Richard Riley to be a special advisor, who came right out of the classroom and spent 7 years at the Department of Education, where they eventually began calling her Bulldozer. But I want to tell you today about one of my role models. And I think she might be in this room or out in the hallway, and that's Annette Romano. And Annette and I have been friends for a long time, and I have seen Annette continue to lead through, various terrible life crises going on, and she was kind enough one time to share a story about writing to a member of the Board of Regents about what testing meant to her son. But yesterday, when we were driving around, Annette told me this story, and she said, I was teaching first grade, and it was the first year I had to give standardized tests to first grade. And so I did what I was told to do, and I gave my first graders one-on-one these assessments, standardized assessments in literacy skills. She said, when I finished doing that, I was so angry. I went upstairs and I said to my principal, I am never doing this again. I'm not. It's bad for kids. And he paused and said, well, could you come up with something better? And she said, yes, absolutely. And he said, okay, well, consider it your summer curriculum project. You work on it and you bring them back in the fall, and we'll see if, what happens. So she did. And the other first grade teachers liked them. They used them that year, and after they used them the first year, they got together and collaborated and tweaked them and made them better. And for several years, that was the plan. They were using these teacher-created assessments. And then she said, of course, that all went away. And then she paused and she said, but I'm not giving up. And I think that's the essence of teacher leadership. I'm not giving up. And this are the thoughts that I want to leave you with today. Build a new model. Thanks. It's been a gas being here.
Offer you a little token of appreciation.
Are they donuts?
You can use it with them.
All right.
It's the coffee mug.
Okay, let me tell you what we're doing. We're going to continue till 10. I'm going to talk, and then at 10 we'll take a break. The little stickums I told you about, so you could vote on the panel questions, they're going to be outside to your right on two big green, like soft, flat benches. And the questions are on the right wall. You can pick, you take your 3 stickies and you choose the questions you like the best. And at 10:15 we'll start our panel, okay? So we're going to get going. Oh wait, one more thing. I need these people to see me after my presentation. Wheelerville Union Free School District, you have a receipt. Patricia Luria, you have a receipt. Denise, I have some money for you and a receipt.
I'm Denise.
Maybe I'll get going. Tara, I have a receipt for you, and Ruth, a receipt for you. All right. So let's do this. I don't want you to leave because it'd be mayhem, but just get up and stretch for 2 minutes. Just get up, get the blood out of your butt and calves, and back into the rest of the body.